To preface the topic of this video, let me just say that I am quite the avid gacha consumer. I do like to go ahead and try out every new gacha release as they come out, for one, to kind of scope out the competition, but to also see what these other games are doing, because it leads to kind of fun video topics like, say, the Arknights one that we did earlier this year, talking about, oh, could we get like a Chaldea-based system similar to how they have their own, Arknights base system, right? And just kind of talking about how that would work in our game. And as a general rule of thumb, I like to at least play a lot of these gacha games for a couple of months to kind of get a good vibe of, okay, we get past the new player login experience, or lack thereof a good new experience, and I can firmly critique how this game is and if I want to kind of keep my account and still keep playing it. And that has kind of led to this video topic. The fact that I have played a lot of these games for a good couple of months to a good couple of years before, deciding, oh, I don't know if I can still keep playing this game, or maybe I'll just hold it on the side and log in every now and then. I have experienced, for lack of a better term, these catching up periods where the global server wants to get more caught up, if not completely caught up, to their host server, whether that be a Chinese server, a Japanese server. I have experienced it all. I have experienced very good time management where they're able to make it a very seamless transition where you don't feel like you're being bum rushed through all of the content. And I have also experienced absolutely horrific transitions where you just simply don't have the time to save up for the units that you want to get. You don't have time to do all of the events they're tossing your way. It just seems really overwhelming, right? So I wanted to use that to go over three things in this video. For one, I'd like to go over a good example of where I saw the global server catch up in a very good way, but then I'd also like to, two, go over a bad example that we're actually seeing right now in another gacha game that we're currently going through that, and it's quite bad. And then three, I'd like to talk about where I think FGO should land, because as a game, I think it lands somewhere in the middle. So with that being said, let's start off with the good experience. And this actually comes from a gacha game that I don't really see talked about very much anymore, but it is something that I have picked back up recently after I did, again, play it for about 7 years. I'm like, you know what, let me just hop back in, and I've been having a pretty good time with it, and that is unironically Bleach Brave Souls. See, back in the day, we were a good couple of months behind the host server over there, right? But they decided that they wanted to at least tighten things up a bit and get the global server only a month behind the JP server. So we would see a new character release over there and we could be like, dude, that's super sick. We could see that next month. We could at least start saving a little bit on top of what other savings you already did have. And it didn't really feel all that bad. Now, to be fair, it might be like an extra event here. Maybe you get an extra banner or two every single month. But because the game is one of those ones that allows you to auto farm, it wasn't really all that bad. You can kind of still be catching up as you were just doing whatever else. You could be playing another gacha game on like an emulator on your PC, you could be playing your Xbox, your PS4, whatever have you, and your account is still catching up even if they do toss in an extra event. And around that time, it also helped that Brave Souls did this thing where they would always feature 3 new units at a time, and that kind of led to them all just either being kind of middling, or maybe there was one good servant on that banner, or not servant, but character on that banner. Sorry, I'm too FGO pilled. I just always think of characters as servants, so bear with me on that. But you would basically get 3 new characters, and maybe one of them would be kind of stand out, but usually you could avoid going for them because that guy would probably go in the general pool and you would get them eventually on a better banner. So it was a very nice, clean transition, and as far as I'm able to see getting back into the game right now, they've actually closed that gap even further. So as soon as a new character releases on JP, it's like, what, a couple hours later because of time zones, it releases on the global server, and that was an absolutely good experience. I have no negativities about how they were able to handle that, but as opposed to that, as far as a negative experience, that actually comes from what is going on right now on the Dragon Ball Z Dokkan battle game, the bubble popping game that you've probably seen. Because a good, year or two ago during one of our anniversaries, they announced that they wanted to sync up the global version with the JP version of the game, and they had a ton of time to essentially get a 3-month-ish period gap between the two games down pat, and that should have been just completely fine to cover, right? I mean, there's a little bit of oddities, like say their Golden Week banners over on JP would usually actually release over on the global server during November for like our Thanksgiving thank you celebration, essentially. So there was some oddities where generally everything was about 3 months behind, but there would be some content that would maybe be like locked behind this weird half of year like holiday transition, but it's nothing that you can't do in about like a year and a half-ish between when they wanted to sync the two versions together. But they essentially waited until the last moment to sync everything during the global version's most recent anniversary. And everybody knows Dragon Ball characters. I'm not going to go super in-depth for how good these characters are, but essentially let me just rattle off the banners that they hit us with, right? And again, everybody knows Dragon Ball, so at least none of these are big name characters that are somewhat hype and popular, and they're all very good. The worst ones are maybe in like the A tier, right? And that's even kind of underselling them a little bit. So, you know, they hit us with like a Gogeta Broly, you know, type of banner from like the movie, so you know, everybody loves those guys. Then they roll out about 2 weeks later, they roll out Beast Gohan and the Gambits from the superhero movie, and just know that Beast Gohan is indisputable the best unit in the game. He's almost like if you took Castoria and Ibuki and fused them into one unit. We have supports that can also function as loopers, but they're usually not the best loopers. Like Koyan Sky and Ruler Scotty are fine, but you have way better options out there. It would be like, no, she can do the farming and she's also the support at the same time, and nobody comes close to what she's able to do. Like, it's not even within a country mile of what they're able to do. And so everybody goes broke for that, but then they hit us with like a UI Goku banner like 2 weeks after that. Then there's like a Topo banner who isn't the most hype character, but he's extremely good and very good for a niche team. And this is a game that you want to have a lot of different teams built up, especially those niche ones, because they might hit you with this mission to be like, oh, use this like really random small team in this super difficult quest, and someone like that is very good for that, especially because right after they release this Jiren character, right, who is exceptionally good, you know, one of the better characters in the game. Then they roll into another major celebration where they drop, you know, like Goku and Broly from their original movie, right, and they're both extremely good. And then now we see that we're also going to be getting another Broly in the family Kamehameha unit. Suffice to say, it is just banger unit after banger unit releasing. The only way that I could properly say how bad this would be if they tried to do the same thing on FGO is that if for the first time, you know, not doing reruns or anything, but imagine it's the first time that all of these banners back to back are releasing maybe 2 weeks apart from each other. It would be like the original release of Castoria, then the most recent summer banners that we had, then they would just follow it up with Oberon, then they might just chuck out Archetype Earth and CL together, then they would throw out Koyan Skya, then they would throw out, say, Ruler Scotty, then chuck out New Dantes, and then just for good measure at the very end, they would probably chuck out Draco and Tiamat. Like, it is those levels of characters and like how good they are and how hyped they are, just back to back to back with maybe 2 to 3 weeks in between. It is absolutely a horror show, not only to mention all the events that are happening. So imagine all the associated events for those are dropping. Like maybe for Castoria, it's like, oh, we also just dropped, that's when we dropped Lost Belt 6 or something, right? It would be a horror show, which is why I think for FGO, I think there's kind of a middle kind of area I would like it to sit in if they do want to get caught up, because I think being 2 years behind is absolutely atrocious. I find a nice sweet spot to be something like Arknights where they're about 6 months behind. For instance, I am a huge W simp for that game. If you don't know who she is, look up W Arknights. You'll completely get it if you've been around the channel for any amount of time. You'd be like, ah, yes, that is a ZTL type character right there. But a couple months back, she got announced that she's going to be getting an alter version of herself. Just, I don't know, for Fate, you can just literally just think of it as like a costume change, but it becomes a whole new servant, right? Think of it like a summer version, maybe just along those lines. And it's very nice for me knowing that I can save up for 6 months. That is plenty of time for me to get a decent pile of currency saved up, but I also don't have to wait 2 years for someone like Draco or Morgan releasing when they were originally announced on the JP side of things, which can also just feel very disheartening because you might be summoning for somebody like, say, Draco, but then what if we just get randomly announced, like what if they just announced like Summer Draco for this, you know, next upcoming summer, and then she was like basically the normal Draco, but she was just better in every single way, right? And she was going to be in a swimsuit, so it's also just more wifeyable, right? Like stuff like that might make you feel bad. Or say if you do prefer Ruler Melusine to Summer Ibuki, you might be like, oh man, I really wanted to go for Ibuki, but now am I going to summon for her knowing that this other AoE looper is going to be coming out a year later? Like, even meta aside, if we just like the two characters, it can be a little upsetting to find stuff like that out, which is why I think a sweet middle ground for FGO is actually that year gap. because then you could see something like, say, Summer Ibuki coming out, and then Ruler Melusine releases about the same time over on JP, and you can kind of weigh your options. You're like, okay, which one of these do I like better? I can summon for this one now, like I know she's coming out, or I can maybe just wait a year. And even outside of that example, for just hype units that are coming out, you can see somebody like, say, Draco or Tiamat being released, or CL if you're a huge Tsukihime fan, and not be like, ah, okay, 2 years away. I mean, dog, you could be halfway through college in 2 years, right? You start off as a freshman, you might be going into your junior year after 2 years. Like, that is a ridiculous amount of time to be waiting for one unit. At least it could just be one school year in between getting some of these servants. Like, it is a little disheartening, and I have been there to see someone like Draco releasing, and it's still like, yep, still waiting for her to come out. I mean, oh, it's gonna be in April. That's still like a solid 6 months away, and that doesn't also just mention people like Kenshin that's coming out later on that year, which, yes, very nice that you have a ton of time to summon, but bro, I think a year is enough. I know you want to like probably guarantee with 2 years, but a year, if you're very stringent on your polls and you're not summoning willy-nilly all over the place, it's still plenty of time for you to be clairvoyant enough to see what's coming up and be able to save, but also retain a little bit of hype. Because sometimes, I'm not gonna lie, for me, myself, and for people that I've talked about on, say, live streams, which, hey, I stream FGO every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday here on YouTube and over on my Twitch, which is linked down in the description down below, but we have these discussions and people will say that, yeah, sometimes the hype dies out a little bit for me, and when they come over to the NA side of things, it's just, I'm not as excited. And so I don't think, say, doing something like catching it up fully, completely, really fixes that issue, because I do think over here on the NA side of things, we like having that clairvoyance. And I will agree, I love being able to look a year ahead and see what servants we're going to be getting, as it is nice with FGO being a little bit more stringent with their currency. You know, they're a bit more tight-fisted with how much Saint Quartz they give us. They seem to be getting a little bit better, but I don't think anybody's going to be saying that FGO is the most generous gacha game of all time. Having a year feels really nice. At the most, I would want it to be maybe 6 to 8 months behind, but I don't really want it to be like 4 months or even that close. Like, that doesn't feel all that great for being able to save up for some of these servants and some of these new units that be coming out, especially because sometimes there can be these dead periods on the JP server, and sometimes they'll kind of tighten those up. Over here on NA, they might like chuck a new thing in there to kind of keep things flowing a little bit better than the JP side of things. So having a little bit of a buffer period might just make things a little bit better. Like, I do suspect that over here on the NA side of things, we might not have as bad of an Ordeal Call 3 experience where there's just this massive gap in between them, because the team has a lot more time to work with. So they're like, okay, we can definitely plan and schedule things out a little bit more, so we can maybe cut like a 2-week break down to a 1-week break. You know, we can make that a little less kind of hype killing, because I'm not gonna lie, going into part 2 with it only being like 5 new chapters, that is like a little just kind of bit of a letdown, where it's like nothing really happened aside from like, oh cool, we're getting the free to play in another 2 weeks. You know, that's real nice. I guess we're sitting here twiddling our thumbs for another 2 weeks. So I do like the team having the ability to kind of like see that stuff and plan. But again, 2 years is a little bit ridiculous. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Again, I do play quite a few gacha games. You know, there are a lot of them that I've at least tried out. You know, like I've played stuff like Genshin for a little bit. I played Star Rail for a little bit. I'm currently picking up Triple Z, and I'm really enjoying that. But I mean, like, I've tried out the Blue Archives. I played, I'm forgetting it right now, but it's the boat game. Someone will tell me in the comments down below. But I've tried all these games out and experienced these different gaps, and I've at least used the examples that I thought were the easiest ones for me to explain. But with all that being said, again, would love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this discussion video, I'd appreciate a like on the video and maybe even a subscription to the channel. And if you have your own idea for like, you know what, this was a good video, I enjoyed the ZTO guy discussing this, you can drop ideas in the comments down below, or you can come to the Discord and just DM me or ping me and be like, hey man, you should do this video topic. I think this would be really interesting and would make a nice, good discussion video. But with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice day, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.